What's going on, everybody? Tello Talk Podcast back again for another episode. Today is episode, I believe, 16. And today is going to be the day before Thanksgiving when this comes out. So I want to say happy Thanksgiving to anyone listening to this on Thursday, and then happy early Thanksgiving for anyone listening to this on Wednesday. So we're gonna hop right into it today. I've got a couple things to go over for the podcast episode, and including our Week 11 highlight players, our Week our Week 11 surprising teams, playoff fringe teams that we should look at, and our Week 12 pick'em. All right. Well, we're gonna hop right into it. I got nothing else to say for today. I after this last week, we had a good set of games, and a lot of players had a lot of great games as well. And with that, I think there's some players that need to be talked about on here and just kind of acknowledged. So I'm going to start us off with Amari Cooper, Browns wide receiver. Amari Cooper's having the best season he's had in such a long time, and he's got Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. Imagine if he had a guy like Deshaun Watson back when he was elite as his quarterback. Amari Cooper would be putting up top 5 in receiving yards every year. And this year he is 4th for touchdowns with 7, 13th in yards with 698, and only has 50 receptions. So off of that, he's got 14 yards per catch, and he's playing incredible. This last week, he had 113 yards off of 8 receptions and 2 touchdowns. And my big thing for Amari Cooper is just the fact that he is doing all this with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback. And I mean, he's not sharing the wide receiver targets alongside CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup like he used to, and then having to share with Dalton Schultz. You look at how he played with the Raiders. He was kind of like he had Crabtree for a little bit, but he was really the main guy on the Raiders. And you see him getting those good amount of targets, and he was getting good amount of completions, catches and yards. And he's finally starting to do that again here with the Browns. And in the last 5 games alone, he's got almost 400 yards, 17.1 average, and 23 catches. That's just incredible. And that's what I think about Amari Cooper. For me, I think the Browns really fleeced the Cowboys on getting Amari Cooper because you're getting a top 12 to 15 wide receiver in the NFL in exchange for a 5th-round pick. That's probably going to be a guy who's a backup for about 4 or 5 years minimum. And Amari Cooper will flourish under the Cleveland system if Deshaun Watson is the quarterback of the future. And another wide receiver I'd like to talk about is, once again, I talk about him so much, but it's only because I love him. It's Chris Olave. Rookie wide receiver for the New Orleans Saints. He is just incredible. Olave is insane. I love watching him play. He's got 760 yards. He had 102 yards and 5 receptions and a touchdown last game against the Rams. And a lot of people didn't really understand my stat when I was talking about last time. He's got 14.4 yards per reception. If he had the same amount of receptions as Tyreek Hill, he'd be second in passing and receiving yards. What I mean by that is Chris Olave has the potential to be a top 10, top 5 wide receiver, in my opinion. And I mean, he is 10th in receiving yards, 14th in receptions with 51. He has only 3 touchdowns, but he's doing it with Jameis Winston for 3 weeks, and then Andy Dalton for the rest of it. If he had a good quarterback, say he had prime Drew Brees or even Drew Brees, this dude would be off the charts. And I mean, you saw what Michael Thomas was able to do with an old Drew Brees, and Chris Olave would have just flourished as well. However, Brees, towards the end of his career, did have a little bit of a weak arm, so he couldn't hit Olave on those deep routes. But Olave he's got a bright future ahead of him, and the Saints, they gotta make sure they keep this guy on lock. And if they get a quarterback in the upcoming future for the next drafts or 2, they're going to be set with a duo. In my opinion, what they need to do is try and trade for a first rounder this year and possibly get C.J. Stroud and reconnect that bond. That'd be an incredible thing. I mean, you see it with a lot of quarterbacks love playing with their wide receivers that they played at college with in the NFL. And if you were able to reconnect Chris Olave, CJ Stroud, that would be a big one. But I don't see that happening for the Saints due to the fact that they got rid of their first round pick this year, and they could have done it if they kept that one at the record of 4-7. Now, something I do want to point out for Olave is this seemed like it was his first game where he actually went for a lot without having to get like 6, 7 targets. I mean, yes, he had 6 targets and only had 5 catches, but he had 100 yards. But most games he's got around 13, 12, 15 per reception, catch yards per reception. And this last game he had 20. So people can look at him and be like, oh, he could be that streaky player, kind of like a really young Tyreek Hill, but not like speed wise, even though Olave is fast. He could be a streaky player where it's like, oh, he's got that one catch that it goes for a lot. And I mean, he had that. He had the 53-yard touchdown. But I don't think Olave is that guy. I think he's the guy to catch anything you throw to him and the guy that will be a solidified wide receiver one. Solidified. But moving on to the defensive side of the ball, I will say guy I want to highlight after his performance this last week. I hated on him so much like for a long time last year due to the fact that his interception rate was inflated and he had terrible coverage, gave up like 900 yards last season in single coverage alone, which is almost the most all time. I think it might be, but who I am talking about is Trayvon Diggs. Trayvon Diggs, however, he still gives up 438 this year, but compared to last year, that's a lot better. I mean, I like watching this guy because he knows how to play defense now. It's funny. I know that sounds weird, but it's funny. He's finally stepping up and playing the correct defense. He's given up 2 touchdowns this year. And can we just talk about his performance against Justin Jefferson? I mean, Justin Jefferson coming off of a 193-yard week against the Buffalo Bills, and he goes out there against Dallas, and Trayvon Diggs makes him his son. Trayvon Diggs absolutely fathers Justin Jefferson and holds him to only 33 yards on 3 catches. I mean, if this isn't showing signs of improvement from Trayvon Diggs, I don't know what is. And on top of Trayvon Diggs doing well, let's talk. The entire Cowboys defense is doing well. They have 42 sacks and 16 takeaways through 11 weeks of football. They've only played 10 games. They're averaging 4.2 sacks a game, and they're getting at least 1 takeaway every game. 1.6 average. That is absolutely crazy. This Cowboys team, in my opinion, is a team that should be looked at as a Super Bowl contender, although they are the Cowboys, and everybody will say, oh, no, that's not going to happen. They're not going to be a Super Bowl contender. They're not going to hold on to this, They need to be looked as a contender. I don't care if they lost to Green Bay, they lost to Philly. This team, when they're on, they are Super Bowl contenders. And I may sound like a clown later in the future if they lose in the first round like they always do. But I have belief in this Cowboys team, and I honestly think they are better than the Eagles. I think the Eagles team that they lost to kind of lucked out. They played against a Cooper Rush squad that had where Cooper Rush had 3 interceptions. And if they were to face up right now, I think the Cowboys would beat the Eagles as they are at the high point of their season. Despite losing 2 weeks ago, they just beat the Vikings. And the Cowboys offense would be too dominant for the Philadelphia Eagles defense to handle next time they play. And I see the Cowboys finding a way to win this division. And I'm not going to forget about one other guy from Dallas that had a monster game last week. That guy is Tony Pollard. Can we talk about how well Tony Pollard's been doing? He's been doing incredible. I mean, the past 4 games, he has 83 yards on 12 carries, an average of 6.9. And then 14 carries against Chicago for 131. That's 9.4 yards a carry. And then against Green Bay, 22 carries for 115 yards. That's 5.2 per carry. And then against Minnesota, he had 15 for 80. And that's 5.3 yards per carry. he is doing incredible this season. I mean, if you look at his stats, he's got the highest yards per carry with 6 this out of any running back this year. Tony Pollard is establishing himself as a true promising RB1, and he's showing everybody that, hey, everybody's been saying I can be an RB1 on any other team. It's just I'm behind Zeke. Well, give me my opportunities, and I'm going to show to you why I'm better than Zeke. That's what he's trying to do right now. And I'm not a Cowboys fan, but if I were a Cowboys fan, that's when you look at your team and go, do we stick to Tony Pollard going on? I mean, Zeke's in his 7th season, and I mean, it gets tiring at playing running back and just constantly getting beat up. And Zeke is a big guy. He's a big running back. But when you have a younger running back who's going for 131 and 3 touchdowns against the Bears and 115 and 1 against Green Bay, and then 189 total yards and 2 touchdowns. 2 touchdowns against the Vikings. It's kind of eye-opening, the fact that, hey, this running back has had 100 scrimmage yards in the past 4 games. Like 100 plus in each game. That should be something that's pretty notable for an offense, especially an offense as good as the Dallas Cowboys offense. And I just think Tony Pollard needs to get more recognition from the defense, from their offense, and from defenses as well. And then another defense I do want to speak on is not defense, offense. 2 players from their squad I would like to point out is just the absolute dominant offense. You know what? Let's just talk about the offense. The offense of San Francisco. I mean, this team has weapons on weapons. How is a team? This team's 6-4, but how is a team with Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, Fred Warner, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Hufanga? I don't remember his first name. And just, what's his name? Arik Armstead? No, Armstead's not on the team anymore. He's on the, I'm thinking back in the past. Armstead's on the, yeah, you know what I'm saying. Nick Bosa. I couldn't think about him. I don't know why I couldn't think about him. But when you got that much talent on your squad, you got Bosa, who's 2nd in sacks, Fred Warner, who's arguably the best coverage linebacker in the league, Hufanga, the best safety, arguably one of the best this year. And then on the offensive side of the ball, you've got Christian McCaffrey, one of the best dual threat running backs in the league, Deebo Samuel, one of the best dual threat wide receivers in the league, Jimmy Garoppolo, who's starting to step up his play, and Brandon Ayuk, who is a very solid route runner and a good receiver for this offense. And this team is unstoppable. George Kittle finally had himself his breakout game of the year, had 2 touchdowns. And Brandon Ayuk had 2 touchdowns, and Deebo Samuel had a rushing touchdown. This offense is incredible. And I saw this thing. It talked about the 3 T's of the 49ers. There's tape, talent, and talk, I think. So I don't remember, but it was team. Tape, talent, team. What's their record? What do they look like on film? And who's on their team? And they've got arguably the best talent on the team out of any team. And this Niners team is going to be something to be watching in the future. I would not be surprised if the Niners and Cowboys are in the NFC Championship this year, because we've got the Cowboys, who have the best, in my opinion, the best defense in the league, and then the Niners, who have one of the best offenses in the league, in the same conference. And I mean, they played each other in the wild card round, and you saw how that game went. I just think the Niners need to be recognized as a Super Bowl contender, and I don't think everybody does recognize them as that, but there's no reason to not. And those are all the players I'd like to highlight for today, and we'll move on to the next one. I got a little segment called Will They Make It? And it is about players and teams that are on the fringe of making the playoffs, and when it comes to like being in the hunt, or if they're gonna make it or not, like what's gonna happen. And I've got quite a bit of teams to talk about here. I'm gonna start it off with the AFC. I'm gonna talk about one team and then one division in particular. And that team is the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, as a Saints fan, I don't really care too much about who's in the AFC, but I love looking into the AFC playoff race. The Chargers currently are 5-5, and they are ninth in the conference, right behind the Jets, who are right behind the Bengals, and the Bengals are in seventh. And the Jets are someone we will talk about in a little bit. But it's just the Chargers have such a good roster that's being hurt very often. They get hurt quite often. And they are such a talented roster to the point where they should not be missing the playoffs. But yet again, last year they didn't make it at 9-8. And this year they're on the fringe of not making it again at 5-5 heading into week 12. And the AFC is very tight this year. I mean, we have not seen this close of a conference in a long time. It seems like 2 through 9 is a difference of 2 games in a difference of 3 games from 1 through 9. Kansas City obviously's got that AFC West division locked up, in my opinion. After beating the Chargers, they're now 3 games above anyone in that division, so they'll lock that up. But other than the Chiefs and Titans, really, the Dolphins are 7-3. The Bills are also 7-3. The Patriots are 6-4. And the Jets and 6-4. That division is just a cluster. The Chargers are 5-5. The Bengals are 6-4, and the Ravens are 7-3. We could see a possible Bengals-Ravens battle for that division. But at the same time, when that's happening, the other team, the team that doesn't win that division's got to be a little worried about Los Angeles. Almost said San Diego. They got to be a little worried about Los Angeles because the Chargers have the talent to make the playoffs, and Justin Herbert, I mean, is an incredible quarterback. And the fact that he didn't make the playoffs last year was kind of just Bailey's fault. But the Chargers are good. They're so good, and they shouldn't be 5-5 right now. They can't finish games, and they can't stay healthy. And do I think they eventually make the playoffs if they get healthy? Yes. If they don't, they won't make the playoffs, especially with the way the Patriots, Dolphins, Bills, Bengals, Ravens are playing. They won't make the playoffs if they can't stay healthy. If they do get healthy, I do see a big chance of them making it. But as of now, I'm going to say no. And for the AFC East is my next one. This whole division is just everywhere. I mean, 2 weeks ago, the Bills were in number 1 seed in the AFC, and 3 weeks ago they were, and now they're 7-3, just lost 2 straight, and then beat the Browns. And this division's just not. I don't know how this division's gonna go. In my opinion, I don't know who's gonna win it. Currently, the Dolphins are in first at 7-3, same record as the Bills. However, they do have the tiebreaker over the Bills for beating them in week 3. The Dolphins, I will say, are a great team. I talked about them last week. I think the Dolphins are a team that when they're clicking on offense, hardly any defenses can stop them. A team of Tua, Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, Mike Gesicki, Jeff Wilson Jr. That team is dominant, and that team will beat anyone that comes up to them and faces that challenge. Now, a lot of people do believe the Bills will still win this division, with them having a higher percentage chance of getting the 2 seed. And most people's opinions, they have a 16% chance at being the 2 seed, and the Dolphins have a 15. But we have to see. They still have one more game against each other. They got to play in Buffalo, and the winter weather in Buffalo could be a big factor for the Miami players who aren't used to winter cold weather, and that could end up with the Bills win. But in my opinion, I do think the Bills will win this division as well. I think they'll end up as the 2 or 3 seed in the playoffs. And the Dolphins will be the 5. I don't think the Dolphins will win the division. I just think they will be in the playoffs and be able to compete in the playoffs. But for the other 2 teams, they've got the Patriots and the Jets, and they played each other this last week, and that game was atrocious. The Jets have a new starting quarterback. Mike White has been named the starter for this next week because of what Zach Wilson had said he didn't feel like he let his team down yet. Had less completions than their offense did punts. And big thing that I have to say about that is when you're in Zach Wilson's position, you can't go up on that podium and say, that wasn't my fault. That game was not my fault. Because then everybody in the locker room is not going to be behind you. As a starting quarterback, you need your team to be behind you and your team to have your back. And if you go up to a podium post-game after having a terrible performance and you say it wasn't your fault and you didn't let the team down, you do not deserve a starting spot in the NFL. Period. That's all. That's all. That's all about Zach Wilson. And with that, I think the Jets aren't going to make it. I mean, they had a great start, but the Jets aren't going to make the playoffs. The Chargers have a better chance of making it than the Jets, in my opinion. They're just because of the fact the rest of the division's been playing so well. I mean, the Jets got swept by the Patriots. They did beat the Bills. And then they did beat the Dolphins. Yes, I'm pretty sure they did. But that's when Skylar Thompson was the quarterback. This team is not winning the division. This team is not making the playoffs. I'm gonna have to say no for the Jets. Now, somebody that I will say yes for is the Patriots. At 6-4, this team is showing you that Bill Belichick knows how to win, and he knows how to make winning teams once again. They came into the season, had a bad start, and everybody went, well, this team's screwed. They're 1-3. They're not going to do anything. And then they won 5 out of their next 6. Now they're at 6-4, and people can't say, oh, this team's over. It's another year of Bill Belichick saying, I can gather a team and I can create a team that will go out there and win games. In their schedule, it's a decent schedule coming forth. They still got 2 games against Buffalo. They play tomorrow against Minnesota on Thanksgiving at 6:20 Mountain Time. They play Arizona and Vegas, Cincinnati, Miami, and then Buffalo again. They've got a pretty higher up schedule when it comes to difficulty and who they're playing, but they also have a lot of high possibility games to win. In my opinion, don't be surprised if they beat Minnesota tomorrow. Minnesota's on a very low point in their season after just getting wiped out by the Dallas Cowboys. They're going to want to bounce back, but they're going to have to be slow on it, I feel like. So be ready to see New England kind of shock them and kind of punch them in the mouth in this game. And because they've got that dual running back system with Ramondre Stevenson and Damian Harris. And then Mac Jones obviously is the starting quarterback now. Just be ready for the team. And this defense, their defense is incredible, like always. Every team under Bill Belichick's always going to have a good defense. I mean, Matthew Judon's got 13 sacks. He leads the NFL. And they've also got a lot of takeaways, I will say that. I do not know how many. I think they've got 11 interceptions, and they've got 6 fumble recoveries. So 17 takeaways, 1 more than the Dallas Cowboys defense, who I was praising like crazy. So you got to give them more credit too. And that's just, this team will be making the playoffs. So the Patriots, I'm going to go yes. Miami, I will go yes. Buffalo, I'll go yes and division. New York, I will go no. And then moving on to the NFC, this is where it gets a little interesting. We're only talking about 3 teams here. 2 NFC East teams and an NFC West team. And starting off with the NFC East, one of the NFC East teams, I'm going to be going with the Washington Commanders. And the reason I put the Commanders in here is they are in 8th in the NFC at 6-5. They're riding a heavy wave with Heineke at the starting quarterback helm, and they play Atlanta this week. 5-6 team, another team on that brink of making the playoffs. But this Washington team, they're getting healthy at the right time. They're 6-5, a game behind Seattle for the 7th spot, who is another team I need to consider about are they going to make the playoffs. If they keep riding this wave behind Taylor Heineke, and McLaurin keeps playing well, Antonio Gibson keeps playing well, Chase Young's getting healthy, this team is getting hot at the right time for them to make a playoff push. And they could make the playoffs over a New York Giants team who has a tougher schedule going down the road, having to play Dallas, Washington twice, Philly twice, and Minnesota at Minnesota. They've got one team on their schedule remaining that is under 500, and that is Indianapolis. This is going to be tough for New York. And as for Washington, they've got Atlanta, New York twice, San Francisco, Cleveland, Dallas. So Atlanta and Cleveland are very winnable games. At least one of the New York games is very winnable for Washington. So say they win these next 2 games, boom, they're at 8-5. New York will probably lose their next 2 games, putting them at 7-5. That will put Washington over them in the playoffs, and then Seattle, who has Las Vegas this week, will probably win that. Seattle will be at 7-4. Washington will be at 8-5. They'll probably be 8-5 as well. Seattle will. So for New York's in a bad spot compared to Washington because New York's going down after getting absolutely humiliated by Detroit at home. Not at home. Yes, at home. Got humiliated. They just don't look good anymore. They don't look good. I was just talking high about them for being 7-2 last week, but I knew there was going to be a way they were going to have a downfall. And be worried if you're a New York Giants fan because you do not have an easy road to the playoffs, and you don't have that spot locked. But for Washington, I would say because of their easy schedule compared to New York, I'm gonna kick New York out of the playoffs. And as I've said, they've got a terrible road ahead of them. Dallas once, Washington twice, Philly twice, and Indianapolis, who we don't even know at this point what they're doing. And with New York being 0-1 in their division, probably will be 0-2 after tomorrow. Things are not looking good for the Giants. Things are not looking good at all. There's actually a world where the Giants could finish 8-9. But there's also a world where the Giants could finish with 11-12 wins. It just depends on how they come out and how they perform in their next couple games, especially those next first games and those division games. And then for Washington, I'm going to say they are in. I will say Washington's in with the way they're getting healthy and playing well. They started the season 2-4, and now they're 6-5. They're kind of like the Patriots. The Patriots started 1-3, and they won 5 of the last 6. And then now Washington started 2-4. They've won 4 of the last 5. However, as I talked about Seattle, I'm going to put Seattle in, and here's why. They played a terrible game against Tampa Bay, who was probably going to win the NFC South. And Tampa Bay absolutely looked like they beat them the entire game. Seattle played terrible, and they only lost by 5 to Tampa Bay. And also, they lost to New Orleans, but that was a shootout, that game. They lost to San Francisco, and they looked ugly that game. And in Atlanta, they lost a close one in Atlanta, which wouldn't happen if it was at this time in the season, in my opinion. It wouldn't happen again. They're riding behind Geno. They're riding behind Kenneth Walker Jr., not Jr., the third. I always call him Jr. But Geno Smith and Kenneth Walker and DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, the team is just proving everybody wrong. A team that was projected to have 5-6 wins this year is at 6-4 already, a little past the halfway mark. And they're looking like a team that will make the playoffs, as they've got quite a little easy of a schedule coming up with Las Vegas, Los Angeles, and Carolina as their next 3, and that can easily put them at 9-4 and tied for first in their division at that point. So I will say, yes, Seattle makes it, and that is enough for me. If will do they get in? And we'll move on to our final segment of the day, which is going to be Week 12 Pick'em. Now tomorrow we've got 3 matchups on Thanksgiving Day. We've got the Bills going back to Detroit to play Detroit this time, not to play Cleveland. But that is the 9:30 Mountain Time game. The Cowboys host the Giants like they always play on Thanksgiving. The Cowboys do at 1:30 Mountain Time, and the Vikings will host the Patriots at 5:20 Mountain Time. Actually, or no, this is in Pacific Time. I'm pretty sure. No, it is not. I gotta get my clock right. But the Bills and Lions, for me, I gotta pick the Bills. Although the Bills aren't in the greatest spot right now, the Lions are in a really good spot off of a 3-game winning streak. However, the Lions, I don't see them beating the Bills, as I think the Bills are one of the better teams in the NFL right now, despite losing 2 of their last 3. Josh Allen really needs to step up his play. However, if he wants to be looked at like an MVP, and I think this is his chance to do that in this game, to try and get back in that conversation alongside Mahomes, because Mahomes is the clear-cut favorite to win MVP going into Week 12, and Allen was that for the first 11 weeks of the season, or 10 weeks of the season. Now, for the next game, which is the Giants and Cowboys, I think I made it pretty self-evident who I think is going to win this game. It is going to be Dallas coming out with a win, and I think they will humiliate New York. New York may prove me wrong, but I think New York will be humiliated after losing to the Lions last week. Morale's low. They need a win. And the most ideal team to play against is not the Dallas Cowboys right off of a bad game, especially after they pummeled the next team I would talk about, which is the Vikings. But the Cowboys will win this one. For score predictions, I'd say the Bills will win like 38-20, and then the Cowboys will win 34-13. I think the Cowboys will dominate the Giants. And for the last game on Thursday, I've got the New England Patriots going to Minnesota to play the Minnesota Vikings. And here's my upset alert. I'm going to have the Patriots taking this one. I just don't think Minnesota's going to come out. They're going to come out flat like they did last week. And New England will come out with charge, and their dual threat offensive system for running backs will attack the Minnesota Vikings, and this defense will just attack them in. It's another really good defense that Minnesota's playing against. In the last defense they did, which was the Cowboys last week, they got absolutely fooled. So I think the Patriots will take this one. It'll be a close game. It'll be about 27-23, 27-20. And going into Sunday, the first game is the Texans and Dolphins at 11 o'clock. And I will have the Dolphins winning. The Texans are terrible. Just not a good team. That's really it. The Dolphins, I mean, I've said enough about them. They're amazing. Tua will probably have 250 yards at least. To expect a big game from Tyreek. I'm hoping Jeff Wilson Jr. does great because I got him on as my flex in fantasy. But Dolphins will win this one. Probably drop at least 30. I'd say 35 to 17, 14. Next game, Bengals and Titans. This is going to be a good one. 6-4 Bengals, 7-3 Titans. Rematch of the AFC Divisional from last year. The Bengals won that one. And I'm actually going to go with the Bengals winning this one again. Although there is a fully healthy Derrick Henry in this matchup, I think the Bengals will be able to limit him as much as they can, although he'll still probably have 100 yards. But this is going to come down to, can Ryan Tannehill play well? And if he I don't know if he will. I think the Bengals got his number. And Joe Burrow, I think, will have a great game, and Joe Mixon as well if he's back. If he's not, if Samaje Perine doesn't decide to have a monster performance. But this team, I will say the Bengals will win it in a close one. It won't be a very high-scoring game, in my opinion, because there's a really good defense in Tennessee and a Bengals defense that fights and fights hard. I will say this game is going to be 21-17 Cincinnati. And the next game is the Broncos and Panthers. As much as I hate to say it, I really hope the Panthers win this game because just another reason why the Broncos shouldn't have given Russell that much money. But with that, I think the Panthers do not win this game. I think the Broncos will come out with a win. It'll be a very bad game, though. It's going to be like 16-7 or like 17-10 Broncos. The next game is Bears and Jets. I think this is going to be a close game, another game where the Bears get in a close one and lose it. Justin Fields is going to have himself a game once again. I think this game will be a 24-23, 24-22, 24-20. One of those. But the Jets will win this game. The next game is the Falcons and Commanders. I've got the Commanders winning this one in a close one against Atlanta. I think Mariota will kind of struggle against this defense. So that's why I've got the Commanders winning it. And I will say the Commanders win this game 27 and like 20. 27-20. It's going to be within a touchdown. It's going to be a touchdown game. Next game is the Buccaneers and Browns. I will give this one to the Buccaneers, unfortunately. I'm rooting for the Browns with Jacoby Brissett and Amari Cooper and whatnot. But I will give this one to Tom Brady, and they will probably win this with ease. It'll probably be a 17-35, 17-34, 31 game. Next game is the Ravens go to Jacksonville to play the Jaguars. I'm going to pick Ravens to win this one. Win this one. That was bad. Bad voice crack. Baltimore's going to win by about 17. It could be like a 34-17 game. 24-10 probably. Actually, 14-point game. But that's just what I believe. I think the Ravens will come out of there, Jacksonville, with a W. As for the next game, Raiders-Seahawks. The Seahawks will win. I think the Raiders will keep it close, maybe like 6 to 10 points. But Seattle will pull out the win. Chargers-Cardinals. Now, this is a good one. I think the Chargers will win this one. I think it's going to be a close one. Kyler Murray, if he comes back, could be a big difference. I think if he's here. If Murray plays, it's going to be a close one. Chargers will win. If he doesn't, McCoy is going to get absolutely destroyed. Saints 49ers. If Cameron was on this today, he'd go on about how much the Niners are going to win. I think the Niners will drop 35 points on the Saints' heads, and the Saints will probably lose. For my sake, I will pick the Saints to win this game. As a Saints fan, I have to be high on them. I'm going to pick the Saints to win this game, but do I think they'll win the game? No. And the next game I've got on here is the Rams and Chiefs. This was anticipated to be a good game at the preseason. However, it's not going to be a good game. The Rams are going to get absolutely demolished. The Chiefs will win this one 41-14 probably. They'll demolish the Rams. Packers-Eagles is the Sunday night game. And this could have been a good one, but I don't think it's going to be a good one. The Eagles will sneak out with a win. I think they'll sneak out with a win, so it will be a good one, actually. They'll win by about a touchdown, but the Packers' season will be over after Sunday night when they go to 4-8, and the Eagles advance to 10-1. As for the last game of the week, the Steelers and Colts, Monday night football. It's not a very good Monday night game, but I will have the Steelers winning this one, actually. I think Pickett and Pickens are connecting well. So I think that this will be a game that they can connect in, and Najee Harris will have himself a good game as well. And that will lead to a Steelers victory in Week 12. And that'll be all for the Pick'ems, and that'll be all for today's episode. Thanks to everyone listening today. We've got Thanksgiving tomorrow, so make sure to be thankful for everything and Tell your parents you're thankful for them. Tell your friends you're thankful for them. And, you know, if you're listening to this on YouTube, comment down what you're thankful for. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcast, follow the podcast and make sure to tune in every week when I drop new episodes. Because I do this all for y'all. You know, I'm thankful for my audience. That's what I'll say. But that's going to be it for me today. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day, wonderful evening, wonderful morning, night. And Tello Talk out. See ya.